My husband and I have been together for 12 years, married for 8. We have a 5-year-old son and a 2-year-old daughter. Until recently, he was the perfect man in every fathomable way. Recently, maybe the last 2 years or so, he's completely changed, and I'm at the point where almost every waking moment is utterly miserable. Just to run through today. The kids woke up early, so he took them downstairs to watch TV so I could sleep in. We both work full-time, but as a teacher, he gets a lot more holiday than I do. I'd booked this week off as holiday. He had promised me that we would go away somewhere, but then ended up making excuses, saying he'd rather do various day trips instead. And then our daughter had a doctor's appointment come up today. Where we are, you request an appointment, they send you one, and you have to actively phone up and change it if it doesn't work. I asked him to change it repeatedly, but he made several excuses, and it ended up not being moved. I got out of bed because our daughter, despite my husband watching her, was at the bottom of the stairs, banging on the staircase and screaming at 7 a.m. As soon as I get downstairs, he pretty much brushes off parenting and walks off, so I had to catch her as she fell off the backless stool he'd put her on, and then get her more cereal that she was crying for. For our childcare nursery fees, we have to submit the costs to my husband's employer because they cover some of the costs. The date it needs to be submitted by changes each month, but is between the 20th and the 24th. I am always nagging him to get this done, because most months he misses the deadline and we lose money that we can't afford to lose. He comes to me this morning and says that he's gone to submit it this morning, but because our daughter is changing nurseries, now he can no longer access proof of the last payment on the nursery system. Firstly, this is infuriating because he waited until the 21st to submit it when he knew the deadline can be as early as the 20th. Secondly, this is infuriating because I specifically requested repeatedly that he save the proof down earlier in the month for this exact reason. I then said to him, "Have you checked the email? Because the nursery also sends out the proof via email." He said, "Email? What about email?" As if I'd said, "Have you asked Gandalf? Or did you try doing a magic invoice dance on the front lawn?" I said it should be on our emails, and he said, "Oh, yeah, I checked our email, it wasn't there." So I got my laptop, checked our emails, and it was right there. I asked how he could, on the one hand, be so confused by my insane suggestion to check emails, and then 5 seconds later say he'd already checked it if he'd checked it. Then why did he think it was such a crazy suggestion? And if he checked it, how come he didn't find it? Moving on, I asked my husband what he wanted to do today, and he said he wanted to get some DIY done. I asked if he'd rather do the DIY or go somewhere for a family day. He said he'd rather do DIY. I said to him that I'm happy to do that, but recently when he's been saying he wants to do DIY, he's actually just wanted to sit around surrounded by tools and not actually do anything. So I said that if he's in the mood where he doesn't actually want to make any progress and just wants to waste time, then we should just have a family day. He insists he wants to make progress. I've designed a DIY project. My husband, as he does with everything I design, had an issue with the design and insisted on changing things. The things he changed meant that the first design couldn't work, so I had to repeatedly rework the design to fit his changes. To complete the project, we needed 3mm MDF. On Sunday, we'd gone to buy MDF from a hardware store, HS1. In the store, I asked him about it, and he said he wanted to buy the MDF in a different hardware store, HS2. I double-checked, and he confirmed that he definitely wanted it from the second hardware store. We went on to HS2, and he then remembered he actually wanted to get it from HS1. Because of one-way road systems in the town and the route back to where we live, it'd take a long time to go back to HS1. He then said he actually wanted it from a third hardware store, HS3, which is near our house. But HS3 isn't open on Sundays, so that's why we couldn't finish the project on Sunday. So this morning, we head off to HS3 to get the MDF. Because he's changed the design so many times already, and I keep having to make knock-on changes, I said to him how important it is not to change the design, and made him promise not to change the design again. He promised he would stick to the design and wouldn't do anything differently. He then parked up at HS3 and got out his phone, he said he was checking that they actually sell 3mm MDF. Turns out at that point, he found out that they don't sell 3mm MDF, but didn't tell me even though I was sat right next to him. He went in and came out with 9mm MDF. It can't be returned because it's been cut. He told me that he went in and found out they don't sell 3mm MDF, which is a lie. It turned out he knew that before going in and that he didn't want to come back out and tell me because he thought I'd be annoyed that he didn't buy it in HS1 or HS2. The problem is that 9mm MDF means that, yet again, the whole design needs to change, and I have to redo 100 of the work that's already happened, essentially. Imagine you're making a box, the frame is made, and the MDF is going around the frame. Because the MDF is now 3 bys thicker, the box won't fit where it needs to go. So the only way to make the 9mm MDF work is to remake the frame slightly smaller. I go inside and try to make it work, but I am absolutely seething. He promised me that he wouldn't make any changes to the design even after he decided he was going to make changes to the design and lie to me about them. Then, in the process of measuring and cutting the MDF, he's just being plain difficult, disagreeing with everything, making suggestions that make no sense, saying that changing the size of MDF wasn't a material change to the design, it's literally a change to the material. After 45 minutes, he's made 2 cuts to the MDF. This is not measuring time. I did the measuring. Eventually I said, forget it, we're going out for a family day. I'm done. We get our shoes on and get the kids and go out. I said to him, you choose where to go. I'm still in a bad mood. He puts something in the GPS and drives off. After a while, I ask where we're going and he says the beach. I point out that we don't have swimwear, sandals, sunscreen, towels, etc. with us, so the beach won't really work. He puts somewhere else in the GPS and drives off. We have a big discussion about how upset and hurt and angry I am that he just doesn't care about me at all. He doesn't listen to anything that I say. He just doesn't care. He says he does care. He doesn't know why he got the wrong MDF, but he didn't think it mattered. He promises that he'll try really, really, really hard to show that he does care and does listen to me. About an hour later, we're still driving and I'm absolutely starving. I haven't eaten yet today. I ask if we can get food, and he says sure, and he'll stop when he says a place. We drive past several more places. I point one out, and he still doesn't stop. I've also got in the back of my mind that there's a place nearby that does a deal on Wednesday's lunchtime that we discussed going to, and this morning I'd suggested we go there for lunch. At this point, both kids have fallen asleep in the back. Eventually, we're coming up to a service station with a food court, and he asks if I want to stop the sign lists some of the food places at the food court, and I comment that I'd like one of them. He pulls in and there's another sign listing all the places in the food court. He comments on one that wasn't on the first sign that he'd like. I then see a sign for a special at the place I originally said I wanted and said how good that specific dish sounds. To be clear, neither of us dislike either place, particularly. He says, yeah, but we go there pretty often, and I responded only about as often as we go to the place he wants to go. So, he gets out of the car to get food, and I stay with the kids. He comes back with food. He's gone to the place that he wants to go to, not the place that I wanted to. And to make it worse, they didn't have the only dish that I order from there, so he got me something else instead. Like, this is him trying really hard to show me that he listens and cares by going to the place that he wants food from, and even when they don't have the dish I like, still not getting me the one I want from the place I wanted. I didn't say anything, tried to be positive and not crap all over him getting food. After eating, it turns out he'd driven us for a family day out to IKEA. So I try to be positive and carry on and not say anything. So we wander around BQ and our 5-year-old wants to buy everything, and our 2-year-old wants to sleep in every bed we woke her up to go in, so she's crying the whole way around. We then have to rush out to get back in time for the doctor's appointment, which we end up being late to. He doesn't listen to anything I say. I spend most of my time repeating myself. We have cameras in our kitchen to watch the dogs while we're out, but they're most often used to prove to him that I did in fact tell him things that he's claiming I never told him, or to prove to him that he did in fact, make promises that he's not sticking to. At this point, I'm just pretty broken and done. It's not a big thing he didn't have an affair, he hasn't killed anyone, he's not violent. It's just death by 1,000 tiny cuts of him, religiously not giving a crap. AIO to think this is the end of the road? He's made promise after promise after promise to be better. All he does is make me a cup of tea. And then if I'm not making it incredibly clear that I'm pissed off already, he sees it as an invitation to go back to not caring. He's not a bad person. I haven't stopped being in love with him, but I'm utterly miserable, and despite him knowing this for years now and making almost daily promises to try, he seems to be incapable of following through.